Before this video starts, I just wanted to make a few announcements. First off, we finally got the channel to 500 subscribers. You guys have no idea how much this means to me, and this isn't just me getting this milestone. It was us. We made it to this first of many milestones, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much, and I love you all. And that directly leads into my other two announcements. Number one, I am opening a Discord server for our community, and this is basically just going to be a chill around and have fun server. We're going to have some fun stuff like community days, movie nights, and times where I'm just in voice chat where you can talk to me, ask questions or whatever. I'll leave the invite link for you all down in the description, and if you're having trouble joining, just send me a DM on Twitter or Instagram. Second, I am opening up a Ko-Fi for my channel where you can either support me monetarily through single donation tips, or these monthly memberships that will give you exclusive benefits that no one else will have. But this is something I must stress to all of you. Please only consider supporting me if you're financially able to do so. I understand money is very scarce right now. This is completely optional, but it would help me out a ton and I would appreciate you so much since donations through this means better content for all of you, since my first goal on this Ko-Fi is for a brand new audio mixer. If you want to take a look at my Ko-Fi, I'll also have that link down in the description for all you to consider supporting me today. And that's all I've got, and enjoy the video. Feeling tired? That bench may be iron, but I assure you it's quite comfortable. There's no better place to collect your thoughts before heading below. Life is a very fickle thing. One day we can be the happiest person in the entire world, then the next day all that happiness can potentially crumble under the pressure. With all the really dumb shit going on in this day and age, it's no surprise why so many of us try to find hobbies to escape the harsh world of reality. And mine just so happens to be this, the channel you're currently watching, the one where I play video games all day and then make videos about them. Yep. But that being said, given the thousands of video games I've played in my life, very few have ever made me feel transcendent or unrivaled to anything I've played before or since. Maybe it's just me, but I see video games as more than just games. Perhaps this is my inner cheese and corniness popping in to say hi, but video games to me are a community, a way to bring people together and share our experiences and journeys. And boy oh boy do I have a journey to share with you all today. You could say this one was buried deep into my subconscious because I knew everybody was talking about this one, but didn't really understand why. Straight from the burrows of the underground cast a light and a Team Cherry Tree on the other side, presenting Hollow Knight. An indie Kickstarter Metroidvania that took the world by storm, commonly regarded as one of the greatest indie games of all time. But why? What's so special about this insect-infested world that looks more bleak than a tumbleweed blowing through the desert wind that captured my heart in ways most other games would fathom doing? Well, that's why we're here today. So draw your nails and prepare yourself for the journey to come. A resting kingdom awaits its awakening. Fellow fellas and lady fellas, here's why Hollow Knight is a masterpiece.
3, 2, 1.
Right from the start, Hollow Knight already knows what it wants to be in terms of its looks and world. The game opens with this dark and gloomy atmosphere, yet it still feels calm, as the music reflects this with the soft piano keys. Our main character arrives at Hallownest, and thus the story is for you to unravel. Metroidvanias are normally games where the gameplay and map itself take charge while story and lore are typically given a back seat. But this makes sense. They mostly want to be more gameplay driven for the player. Hollow Knight didn't feel like taking that approach, however. Story and lore are incorporated into gameplay as exploring grants you more information as to what the hell happened to Hallownest. I'm not going to spoil the story since it's best experienced playing the game yourself, But let's just say the story combined with the art style give off a sense of dread and hopelessness, as if the kingdom has lost its will to live. But the player is the lone vessel, the shining hope to help restore this world. The game definitely has the Dark Souls style when it comes to storytelling, and yes, I know we're all sick of things getting compared to Dark Souls.
What kind of fool do you take me for? He's Squidward, you're Squidward, I'm Squidward! Are there any other Squidwards I should know about?
Meow.
I'm out of here.
But unlike, say, Crash Bandicoot or Cuphead, who's only really compared to Dark Souls difficulty-wise, this game feels the most appropriate to have this comparison, not only in storytelling, but visuals as well. Hollow Knight is very vast, but bleak and dark. Places have no light, bigger bugs shall fright, but you must move deeper in the dark and fight. The environments themselves at a first glance look blank, gloomy, and samey when you first start out. You know how you imagine what underground looks like? But as you continue to explore, things get a lot more interesting. Though hold on to this thought, as it'll come into play later. Sound design is just as prevalent here, as it makes the player feel more lonely for you and your travels. The game is mostly silent, with music softening in and out depending on if you're in combat or not, and the music itself is absolutely beautiful. Sound effects feel very minimal, with attacks, spells, and alerting enemies being the loudest things in the room, with everything else being either mute or on a manageable level. But when it's time for the big boss fights to come into play, the music is intense and feels like you're fighting for your life here. I want to give you one of my favorite examples of how the story and atmosphere work really well off of each other, and that's the first time you enter the City of Tears. After finally getting through all the relentless enemies, claustrophobic areas, lack of benches, and easy fast travel, all the stress and challenges you've overcome to get here, and finally defeating the Mantis Lords, we'll get back to them later, you unlock an ability that allows you to move on from the colorful fungal wastes into this dark, cold tunnel that gives you a feeling of fear and dread as the large gates seal you in. The powerful night enemies and explosive bugs, the lack of much sound and music, it all sets up this scary and tense situation as you feel trapped. But as you continue forward, you begin to hear light drips of water, and then, as you enter the next room, those light drips turn into rain, and that music. It's absolutely breathtaking as you approach Quirrell comfortably sitting on a bench. He's gazing out into the gentle rain falling just outside the window. Quirrell says he wonders where all this rain is coming from since the city's underground. You contemplate it all with the beautiful and gentle piano piece dancing in the background. It truly felt magical and majestic. I feel like I could sit at that bench for 5 to 10 real-life minutes of my time because of how wonderful this moment felt. This moment is just a nice way of telling us that no matter how grim or rough or sad we might be feeling, no matter how lonely or meaningless we may feel about life, just existing and being on this earth presents the possibilities of jubilant, memorable moments that can stick with us forever and make our lives feel worth it and look forward to what our future may become. Goosebumps guaranteed. But that's the secret to Hollow Knight's brilliance. It lies within 2 words: woeful beauty. Remember how I just said that Hollow Knight's brilliance lies within that feeling of woeful beauty? That's honestly how I describe the immersion of this game in a nutshell. Despite everything being real dark, cold, and bleak at a first glance, the game brightens up a little bit as you continue to explore new locations of Hallownest. I already mentioned how City of Tears transitioned from this feeling of fear to being gentle and breathtaking, but most other locations feel this way as well, and that's thanks to the color palette. You know, I thought Underground was meant to be this dark void of fucking nothingness, but Hallownest is here to tell us, you know, not everything is so black and white. The color palette is a shining example of how the vibrant looks of this game enhance the overall immersion. You got colors like your fertile emerald greens, bold and deep blues, golds and pinks, and mysterious yet magical purples. You've got rooms with intense darkness set aside by rooms with blinding light. And since the game is mostly achromatic with its bleak atmospheres, When the colors do come in, they really pop, making the brighter colors feel brighter and the darker colors feel darker. It's a really fascinating art style and color palette that resonated with me almost immediately. Times may be dark now, but there's always light at the end of every dark tunnel. Do you see now how Woeful Beauty, two words that mean the opposite, can perfectly convey the immersion Team Cherry wanted to go for in this game? It even goes as far as the nameless main character itself. Those beady bug black eyes, dark gray cape and body over a rounded snow white face. On top of all these glimmers of hope in a hopeless kingdom, there's also all the characters we meet throughout all of Hallownest. Despite the grimness of everything, the NPCs themselves are strangely adorable in design and character. Some characters feel lost and sad, while others feel optimistic and exultant. Like here we have Mila, the happy miner who likes to sing and dig for crystals. A small beacon of light in a big dark world, if you will. Then you have others like Cornifer, the cartographer by trade who simply wandered off as a hatchling, leaving his siblings and mother behind, who nowadays is working on mapping the entirety of Hallownest. He can also be heard whistling and muttering to himself, which can help add to the liveliness of the world. And there's even Coral, who we encounter a few times on our journey. He serves his role as the explorer with the in-world reflections or parallels for the player. He has a much different perspective with every new area he explores under his belt, and his journey has been eerily similar to your own. It's all these little things that make the world of Hallownest feel that much more lively and immersive, even though, you know, everything around them is dying and infected. The game has so much character and a unique identity that truly sets the bar for not only other Metroidvanias, but other games as a whole. Like, take a look at how a bench spawns on the map. Character, or whenever the stag runs for fast travel, or whenever you free a grub from its clutches. Character. Everything is just so well thought out and full of personality that it's incredible to me. But now I feel like it's time we talk about how looks aren't the only way a game can achieve the title of masterpiece. Now this is a video game at the end of the day, and what good is a video game if you don't have great gameplay to go with it? Well, it will probably be something like Sonic 06. But I digress. At its core, Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania, a video game genre with a focus on free exploration and unlocking new traversal abilities along the way. Take, for example, a Metroid game or certain Castlevania games, hence the name Metroidvania. Duh. You can admire a game's art and sound design all you want, but a game is ultimately as good as the way it feels in your hands. At least that's how I feel. Thankfully, Hollow Knight feels great to play. The controls kind of feel like a Mario game if I'm being honest, feeling tight and responsive. The game starts out slow and kind of stiff, as you only get a jump and a basic slash. Only by confronting the darkness that is the kingdom shall you be granted thy abilities and tools. Late game Hollow Knight feels much different than the beginning, almost like a completely different game. Progression kind of feels like a double-edged sword. You'll wander aimlessly for several fucking hours due to the lack of a traditional map that can only be restored by buying map shards from Cornifer, and even then, it won't be restored completely till you sit on one of the many benches scattered throughout the map. You also have very little ability starting out, making you feel hopeless. You'll find so many places you won't be able to traverse through yet, and you'll just end up being confused. But if you stick with it, you'll quickly get over that hurdle as you're constantly gaining new abilities, charms, and tools to help you on your journey. And what's interesting is that most of your abilities you gain are around movement and not combat. Yeah, you have some combat abilities, but movement is the key to moving forward. Dashing, double jumping, wall jumping, super duper dashing. The sense of reward unlocking these abilities after exploration or defeating a tough boss feels oh so good. And even then, combat is just as rewarding and satisfying while doing very little. Aside from a few spells, you basically have this little slash in all cardinal directions. Combat is more reliant on your movement and positioning rather than nuking everything to Kingdom Come. Since I also really enjoy the likes of Zero and Mega Man X4, yes, this is fucking clean. The mechanics in Hollow Knight really enhance the overall experience by allowing you absolute control, something that is very crucial in a Metroidvania. For example, there's the soul system. When you defeat enemies in this game, you are able to gain soul. If all your hit points are lost, you obviously die, and a shade enemy will appear right where you died, and defeating it gives you back all your currency and soul. But if you die before the shade enemy dies, poof, you lose it all. But thanks to the soul system, you're given complete control on how many hit points you have by using your soul you gain by defeating enemies to focus and restore your hit points. Trust me, I could think of many Metroidvanias that would honestly kill to have this mechanic. This feeling of absolute control can even be applied to the controls themselves. At first you'd think the pressure-sensitive jump mechanic, where the knight's jump height is dependent on how long you mess with that jump button, sounds and feels finicky. And you'd be right. But here it feels so natural, dictating the amount of space you need to cover in both the horizontal and vertical planes. Because of this, you need to be strategic with your jump height, considering the fact that platforming in this game is hard as fuck. I guess you could say this game has a massive high skill ceiling and high risk, high reward platforming. The same can be said about the enemies and boss fights. They each have their own attack patterns and behaviors. You can learn them, and you will, but the game is never going to ease up on the gas for a second. Going back to a boss I mentioned earlier, let's look at the Mantis Lords. You fight this very tough opponent whose attacks are big and swift, but through determination you learn the pattern and defeat her. Your reward? Fighting 2 more of them at the same time. Yeah, it may seem like the game's giving you the fat middle finger to your accomplishment, but you're prepared for this. You mastered the pattern, now just master the double pattern. It's honestly pretty genius, and it's become my favorite boss fight in the entire game. Plus the music is just so damn good. Charms may not be as complex as the mechanics are, thank God, but there's still a nice little upgrade alongside being able to upgrade your nail to do more damage. There's a total of 45 of these charms that can be found everywhere throughout the world, as well as in the shops, and they have a lot of neat side effects. Some examples being the Soul Catcher, that increases how much soul you gain after defeating enemies, and the Hive Blood, which heals your hit points over time without having to stop and focus, costing you soul. The gameplay just feels so refined all around and fun to traverse through as you discover more about what happened to Hallownest. And I haven't even gone over everything like the Dream Nail that allows you access the minds of these Hallownest creatures, where you either gain extra soul or face even more challenging versions of the boss fights. Speaking of that so-called difficulty, let us discuss that now. So if you haven't been able to get the memo through seeing this gameplay or even through my own words, I think enough time has passed. This game is long. This game is hard. Really hard. Like, the only Soulsborne game I've played is Bloodborne, and while many Soulsborne fans claim it's one of the easier ones, it still gave me its fair share of challenge. But this, this is pretty much 2D Soulsborne. This game will kick you down and piss on your grave so many times. All the while, you'll be traversing through extremely tricky and precise platforming, dealing with relentless enemies that will never stop chasing you till they're either dead or you run away like a little bitch. The boss fights that will kill you without mercy, and yes, I said will, not can. And of course, there's the White Palace that'll make me rip my hair out faster than you can say, oh my god, this fucking game. So yeah, this game's hard. But this is a game where its difficulty is an incentive to keep pushing yourself forward to triumph. It's a lot like how I describe Celeste's difficulty, in the sense that the game will beat you senselessly many times, but it's not more malicious than some other games that have this kind of difficulty. It's a learning environment that you'll constantly be adapting to. It feels so rewarding and satisfying when you take down every enemy, every boss fight, find all the essence, find every charm, find every grub. I'd 112% every save file if my life wasn't so capricious. That's why I feel that every death you have in this game makes me feel stronger. Dying in this game is mostly your fault, and it motivates me to do better in this game. Every time I stop playing and when I'm done for the night, I get a little sad. I just can't wait to get further in this game during every run I have. But at the same time, This game's difficulty makes it hard to recommend because it makes the game not that approachable. As a gamer who leans more towards easy to pick up and play games, I won't be afraid to admit that I initially struggled. This isn't a game you can just casually pick up and play like it's no big deal, because it is a big deal. I know Metroidvanias are normally like this, but Hollow Knight is even more so than the norm. This is a game that knows what it wants to be, so you have to really love it in order to finish it. While it was easy to fall in love with this game for me, if you don't, oops. Though I suppose that's my only complaint. Other stuff like your soul disappearing while being interrupted when focusing are more of an annoyance than straight up flaws. So now I must reflect back on everything I've talked about so far and ask myself, what makes Hollow Knight a masterpiece in the first place? It's honestly difficult enough to consider a video game a masterpiece. They are games that go above and beyond the qualities and expectations in their respective genre, as well as being able to innovate, set, or go beyond their respective genre or field. Hollow Knight, in some ways, does feel like it's innovating for other Metroidvanias. The soul mechanic alone feels like something I've never experienced before in any Metroidvania. Feels like a mechanic that should honestly be in more games in the genre, hell, more games in general. I almost get this same feeling with the emphasis of movement and positioning rather than combat as well. It's just so rewarding and satisfying to pull off. I was simply just glued to my chair when playing this game. It has a gorgeous art style, fascinating lore that I didn't even talk about here, but that's best discovering for yourself personally. Hard but satisfying as hell gameplay and mechanics, a soundtrack so beautiful it makes Zelda soundtracks blush, and an overall experience that put a gigantic smile on my face, and one I can instantly go back to over and over again. This game has such an infectious charm to it, and it gives you everything you could possibly want in a Metroidvania. I remember being recommended this game to a friend on a Patreon server while also playing this game with that very friend who already beat the game 112%, as they proceeded to laugh and humiliate me every time I suffered, but then get all excited every time I triumphed, and it's an experience I'll never forget. It's quickly become one of my favorite video games of all time, an instant classic that's quickly risen up to being in my top 10. I can't believe that I nearly walked past this, but thank God I decided to tread into unknown territory and never looked back. I'm so glad this game is getting a sequel. Even though it's been in development hell for 5 years, everything about Hollow Knight just feels so magical, whimsical, and memorable every time I want to load this game on my PC and press start. Sometimes the smallest of things take up the biggest space in our hearts. And how fitting that all this magic and whimsy is in a game that takes place in an insect kingdom. No cost too great, no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering. Born of God and void, you shall seal the blinding light that plagues their dreams. You are the vessel. You are the Hollow Knight.